I think it's best for us to get aligned on a couple of things that could maybe have some murkiness around them as we get into this 12-game slate. Like there's going to be a lot of narrative sold. I mean, it's narrative season right now, and that's only going to amplify as we get into the season. But I want us to make sure that we cling to some of these truths, if you will, as we get rolling into college football season. So the first one that I think we need to get aligned on, a lot of opinions on Texas. The hot topic is Texas back? Is Texas not back? If you've watched this show for any length of time, you know how I feel about that. You know how we feel about that as a whole. I think it's kind of an incomplete question. But whether Texas is back or not isn't the issue. Texas may or may not be back, but in 2023, Texas is for real and Texas is dangerous. The reason why, they have a quarterback who we all understand wasn't consistent 100% of the time last year, but there was enough there in specific moments to make you say, okay, they got a guy in Quinn Ewers there. They got a guy who can get it done at the quarterback position. I mean, remember where we were all at when he was just absolutely doing whatever he wanted against Alabama. There was a period of time there where he was the leading passer in that game, and he was out in the first quarter, and it was the fourth quarter. He was still the leading passer. So when it comes to Quinn Ewers, I don't think it's a question so much of can he. I think it's a question of will he. So when we talk about Texas, I just want to make sure we're all aligned that are they back? Are they not back? That's not really what's important. Texas, for real, Texas is dangerous. They have more wide receivers than any defense will be able to match up against. Can they take advantage of that? That's the big question. But they're going to give everybody problems because of the talent they have offensively, what they bring back on defense. There's a lot of people right now as we get into prediction season. A lot of shows are giving out their preseason predictions, and you know that we did that a little bit ago. Texas is in a lot of people's college football playoff for a reason. They're very, very dangerous this year. And the difference in this Texas team versus other Texas teams is the depth and the continuity. I want to start with the depth. Texas, there's a lot made about how talented they've been in the past. I'm not here to talk about that. They're talented right now, but they're not just talented at one position group. They're talented across the board, and they're deep across the board. You hear Steve Sarkisian talk about his football team from this past scrimmage they had this past week, and he's like, listen, when we go ones versus twos, it's hard for me to tell the difference. And I don't think he's just saying that to kind of give us something to chew on before we play games. I think he genuinely means that. Steve Sarkisian also has seen it done at the highest level. He was on that staff at Alabama that won a national title. He knows what it looks like to be at the mountaintop. Now he's trying to do it as a head coach, but I think there's something to be said there that Steve Sarkisian knows what he's looking at. The depth there is very, very real. I had someone tell me this is one of the deepest teams they've had in the last decade. So they feel good about where they are throughout the course of a season. They feel like they're built to last year. The continuity piece of this is now the third year of Steve Sarkisian's culture. So much made about Texas and the culture and what they weren't previously in the 5-7 season, and then Bo Davis ran on the bus, like all that. Now you're in year 3. If you don't have it together by year 3, I don't know what to tell you. I think at this point in time, there's some good faith baked in there with what they've done in terms of a positive trajectory from the last couple of years. So bottom line, Texas back or not back, I don't know, but I promise you they are for real. And if you don't want to take them seriously, I think you're going to learn that the hard way when it comes to Texas. So that's the Longhorns for you. Other thing we got to get aligned on here. Let's be careful with Georgia. Let's be careful with how we define them, especially early in the year, because Georgia going for a third national title. They won the last 2. The expectations, the hype, incredibly high, as it always is around Athens, Georgia, for a reason. That brand carries some weight. We understand that. But Georgia is breaking in a new quarterback and a new offensive coordinator. So I want to make sure we allow a little bit of time for Georgia to mesh. So if Georgia doesn't look like they are going to go win a national title in September, that's okay. Give them some time to acclimate. If they're in October and they're still kind of playing with their food a little bit, that's all right. Don't worry about it just yet. Because if you turn your back on this dog in September, October, it's going to bite you in November. Like we kind of saw that last year too, and they weren't breaking in new pieces quite as much as they are this coming season, offensively at least. I mean, think about the game against Missouri. They had to have a comeback effort to win that game against Missouri. Kent State. Game was never really extremely close, but you kind of looked at a couple of scores on the ticker and you're like, man, why isn't Georgia pulling away from these guys? What's up with the dogs, man? Let's wait till we get to that game November 11th against Ole Miss and that game at Tennessee November 18th. I think at that point in time, then you can define what Georgia's going to be as it pertains to national championships and winning the SEC and all that. Be careful with the dogs. Don't define them September, October. Let this thing marinate a little bit. We'll see where they are in November. Notre Dame may be the most impactful team in all of college football when it comes to the college football playoff race for a couple of reasons. They play 3 contenders, 3 teams that all have college football playoff aspirations and are very much so in it according to Vegas. You got Ohio State, you got USC, both in South Bend, by the way, and then they go to Clemson. All 3 of those teams looking to hoist that trophy. There's 2 ways that Notre Dame will have an impact here. One is they just crash the party for any of those teams. Like a loss to Notre Dame, whether it's their first or their second, it's going to impact the way that they are able to obviously sit on Selection Sunday. Think back to what South Carolina was last year. They played spoiler against Tennessee, played spoiler against Clemson. South Carolina, they didn't compete for a college football playoff berth, but they for sure had an impact there on what those teams weren't able to do. Same situation for Notre Dame and what they could do this year. That's one option. The other thing, the way that Notre Dame's built, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that we may look up in November and see Notre Dame sitting right there at 12-0 and ready to go to the college football playoff and sitting out conference championship weekend. They're built in such a way where they are more balanced. They got a lot of key pieces back on defense, in my humble opinion. I know you lose Isaiah Foskey, but still, I think they're going to be good on defense. Sam Hartman was brought in to elevate them to college football playoff status, like period, the end. That's what they play for at Notre Dame. You're not playing for conference titles. You're playing for national titles because they're not in a conference. That is what the expectation is. That is what the standard is in South Bend, Indiana. Marcus Freeman understands that. That's why he brought in Sam Hartman. So they're going to be more multiple offensively as opposed to how run-heavy they were last year with Drew Pine coming in and playing quarterback for them. And for Notre Dame, man, if they do end up going 12-0, there's somehow, I think, this narrative around Notre Dame that because they're not in a conference, their schedule is easy. And, I just want to make sure we're aligned on this. Y'all are probably already ahead of the ball game on this, so just make sure you let the other people know that are just now tuning into college football. Ohio State, USC, at Clemson. Those 3 games, I promise you, are as tough as anyone else is playing in the country. Their schedule is as tough as anybody else's in the country. So if they are sitting there at 12-0, when it comes to Selection Sunday, they will have earned that college football playoff berth. Regardless, though, the impact of the Irish will be enormously high. I want to go to Alabama really quick. There's a narrative around Alabama right now, and we talked about it a lot on this show. So if you're just kind of tuning in right now and getting familiar with us, we appreciate you being here. But there's a narrative around Alabama that they are on the decline because Bryce Young was there last year, Will Anderson was there last year, and they couldn't even make the college football playoff. What's up with Nick Saban, man? What are they doing? Lost to LSU, lost to Tennessee, could have lost to A&M. There was a lot there for Alabama last year that just didn't look very Bama-like with how much talent they had. And so going into this next year, people are saying, man, has Saban lost his touch? Is Bama even going to be a factor? Who's playing quarterback? They're in the 120s in terms of returning production. Just because this animal is going to look a little bit different does not mean it can't still eat your face and smile about it. That's what Bama is right now, man. And I think there will be a little bit more validation to some of the objections people have to Alabama this coming season if they did have that same staff in place, if it was going to be the same approach. Those 2 coordinators last year, Bill O'Brien, Pete Golding, they're gone. They are no longer there. It's now Tommy Rees on the offensive side. It's Kevin Steele on the defensive side. Bottom line, the philosophy is shifting in Tuscaloosa. It's going to be run the football, make you say uncle. To quote Tyler Booker, we want to make people quit. That's what they're doing offensively now. They're getting back to bully ball. And you look at what Alabama has in-house, these 2 ingredients are good enough for me. I understand it's not proven. I understand it still is going to maybe take some time to get totally acclimated, but these 2 things are good enough for me. One, they've recruited a top 2 class every single year since 2019. So the talent on that roster, second to none. All right? Other thing, you got the greatest of all time as your head coach. You have those 2 ingredients in-house, I would not look past Alabama. In my mind, Bama is absolutely still Bama. If you want to overlook them, you want to write them off, that's fine. We got them in our college football playoff. So Bama is still Bama, different animal, same beast, if you catch our drift there. Last one I want to talk about here. I think it's very important for us as we head into college football season to go to your local Publix, Kroger, CVS, a lot of good people on the West Coast. And then you have Albertsons, major market. Make sure you stock up on all the caffeine of your choice. Some of y'all are coffee people. Maybe you're an energy drink person. Maybe you're like me. Maybe you go caffeine pills. Nothing wrong with that. No judgment. We'll talk about that during another show, I would imagine. There's a lot of really good football that will be kicking off at 10 p.m. Eastern come this fall Saturdays. Want to know why? Because the Pac-12 has a lot of really good football teams. Caleb Williams and USC, speaks for themselves. I think that Caleb Williams, to be real, could very much so just JanSport that USC team, backpack style, all the way to the college football playoff, even if the defense doesn't improve. And I think they will improve, but even if they don't, I think he's good enough, should he stay healthy, to just propel them to the college football playoff. Utah, they speak for themselves as long as Kyan Rising is able to be healthy. Back-to-back Pac-12 champions. Oregon and Bo Nix, a huge what-if factor with them. What if Bo Nix picks up where he left off and Dan Lanning continues to build that defense? I didn't even talk about Washington yet, arguably the most prolific passing attack in the entire country. There's a perception around the West Coast and around Pac-12 football for a couple of reasons. One, people don't stay up to watch it. I know y'all do, so I appreciate you doing that. Let's bring everybody else around with us. One, people don't stay up to watch it. Two, you just look at the records and see, man, they had a 2-loss champion. They had a multiple-loss conference champion. Golly, just shows what you can do in the Pac-12, man. Just throw them in the Pac-12 and they'll be good to go. The perception is you have a multiple-loss champion and you somehow have a weak conference. Whereas I think the opposite is true, at least for this year for the Pac-12. If they have a multiple-loss champion, it'll be because they are scarred up, beat up, battle-tested, and found their way through a really good conference. If you have a bunch of just MMA fighters in the cage and just going after each other, and the dude who walks out of there has, black eye, maybe he's got, a bloody eyebrow, maybe he's just looking exhausted and beat up, but he walks out, you wouldn't say, man, he must not be that great a fighter. He looks beat up. Well, yeah, because he was in the cage with a bunch of other crazy people beating the crap out of each other at 10 p.m. Eastern. Let's stay up for Pac-12 After Dark. Probably the last year as we know it to be real. A lot of caffeine that should be consumed right around 9 Central, 10 p.m. Eastern. Appreciate y'all getting everybody else on board with us. We got to get aligned on these things. So I appreciate you helping us align the rest of our college football family into these different frames of mind. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.